Well, you know,
so you get there faster.
I own a occupational health testing company. In my younger years, I was in factories all the time, of course, you know, promoting the business and seeing everything's going all right. And what I've learned is that some people had their employees who were in a job that would have driven me nuts after about 2 or 3 minutes of doing it. Let me give you a prime example, a welder. There were welders that could literally stare at that bead for literally 12 hours straight in one day. Now, that person loved welding and they were masters at it. If that person was the best welder, how often do you see the management saying, well, he's the best welder, thus he would be our next supervisor? When that in fact is probably a mistake, or could be a mistake, because he's good in what he does because he loves what he does. Right. Probably the poorest welder, you know, who, I mean, is a good employee, but this is not his life's blood. He's using welding to get ahead and maybe do other things. Do you find that management sometimes misplaces that evaluation of talent?
Oh yes. Oh, definitely. I think especially. Oh, I didn't mean to jump in there, George. Go ahead. Did you want to speak on that?
Go ahead.
I think that especially in our contemporary organizations, it seems like as of late, especially, they are promoting individuals to management positions when they're really not ready. And for instance, an individual can be very passionate about welding, which can make him an amazing welder. I mean, like really skillful, yes. Extremely impressive work, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's management material. He can be trained, and if he's got the right attitude and the right behavior, and if he wants it, you know, and if all those things line up accurately, it can certainly work. Yes, it can certainly work, but it's not automatic. And I think that's where a lot of companies and businesses sometimes go wrong. They just assume that because he's an awesome welder, that let's just put him into management, or maybe because he's been here the longest, let's put him into management. And you know, a lot of people are going to jump on the opportunity because it usually comes with a little bit of a pay raise, when in fact that's not. There's a lot more to the position than just welding, and there's unfortunately setting those people up to not be as successful as they were if they were in, you know, if things were handled a little bit more appropriately.
Well, you know, if companies don't exercise the principle of talent management, everyone would be promoted to the level of incompetence, and at that level, it would destroy the corporation. Am I oversimplifying that, or is that a possibility?
Go ahead, George. Since I kept checking, I'll keep yakking if you like.
I've had multiple conversations with Joe about this, and you know, he just likes to exercise this thing, just get it all out there, and in a way that is not only colorful but also meaningful. I think Joe, that there are many organizations that they're doing a decent job at you know, doing the right things in terms of, you know, conducting performance reviews on a regular basis, and even you know, using assessments at the right time. So I can tell you, at the very senior levels, we vetted. I mean, we brought in consultants and literally do executive assessment, and then provided work sessions with subordinate leaders to make sure that, you know, before that person was promoted to a higher levels of responsibility, you know, there was some sort of consensus that person possessed the right skills and the right talents. I've seen organizations that do it down to the middle management level, and there's all kinds of different tools that are used, or inventories. For example, people use 360s. Dr. Beaman and I use about 4 or 5 different tools that we use, that we recommend that people would use for different levels. We have organizational tools, and we have executive tools from middle management all the way to top executives. And what that does, it really allows, you know, the the deciding individual to understand what motivates and what drives and how that particular person prefers to behave. And by understanding how that person is driven, what is it that really, makes them happy in terms of how they define the way, to achieve success, then they're able to make sure that they're placed in the right position. So here's an example. We found one person that was in a sales position and was being paid by commission, and went for about a year and didn't close anything. And wasn't able to close any sales. They were giving her a workload, and she just didn't perform. We went and did an assessment and figured out that she was not driven by economics. She had what motivated her was really helping people and helping organizations. So they took all her accounts away and they gave her all the nonprofit accounts. And by year 2, she became the top salesperson in the organization. Just because the organization was able to understand how to incentivize her in a way that would be in alignment, with her goals and the organizational goals. So they invested into a good employee instead of hiring another one, but they were able to reallocate the position that she was in, and just let her go to work.
And take advantage of that.
Right.
Well,
that's a good example.
Does management rely on itself to determine talent, or should management, when they feel that someone, or they have an indication that someone could be more effective in a higher level in the organization, should management actually ask that person, or do they ask typically that person, whether or not they'd like more responsibility, and whether or not those type of responsibilities fits with this person, whether or not those responsibilities is something that they really want to tackle? Or should that be solely on the decided by the management group itself?
You want to take that one, Dr. Beaman?
Sure. In my experience, it goes both ways. It depends on the organization, and it depends on the how big the organization is, how complex things are. I am a firm believer that if acute attention is applied to this particular step in the process, it can be very much a win-win. But you really made a really good point, Joe, and that is that this is the right time to address, to align these kinds of things. If, identify and align, if appropriate, and if applicable, and if the organizational structure is, allots for that. But I know that's a very general answer. So, George, did you want to add more details?
Yes. So the premise of the answer is yes. There's different levels of dealing with this particular situation. So, for example, when you're dealing with the government organizations, they're very good at developing what they call career management fields. Okay, so they'll develop a 30-year lifespan of a person's career with a couple of tracks on it. One is a leadership and management track, and the other one is a technical track. So an engineer, for example, can decide, going back to let's call this engineer a welder. He can decide, that he's never going to be in management because he hates it. He would rather be welding all day long. But within that 30-year lifespan, there's certain gates that he or she would have to cross in terms of certifications, professional development, and some sort of education program, okay? So they can increase their skills and their knowledge about their trade. And they can track for a very long time within that field. And then you have the other type of engineer that would prefer to, kind of be on the floor doing the welding, for a few years, but then start looking at positions of more responsibility where they can become a manager. So then, normally the human resources departments are the ones that track this career management fields, and they create these gates. So for example, they'll say, well, once you've been in the organization for X number of years, then by then you should have completed all these continuing education credits. You should have received all this training. And if you really want to be in some kind of leadership position, maybe you should consider some sort of formal, educational program. So they're able to grow them on a career management field from within that spans, a long period of time. But now we're talking about really where the rubber meets the road, even up to the senior levels. In other organizations, to where the folks or the executive teams are bringing in C-level talent, chief executive type talent. Those decisions are made differently. So a good example was the one of Jeff Sessions earlier today, because their span of control and level of responsibilities are much greater. So you have to look beyond education and beyond resumes. You literally have to look at life experiences, etc. So those folks are vetted differently by a different group of people. And sometimes, I don't know if Dr. Beaman is familiar with this, but sometimes, for example, the nonprofits, when they want to bring in a new CEO for a nonprofit, they'll develop a committee for that, and usually they'll bring in an outside consultant to lead the committee, and then they develop all the parameters, and then they interview a bunch of people, and then they make a recommendation for hire, once they found the right talent. So it depends on the organization, whether you're a for-profit, whether you're a civic organization, whether you're a nonprofit, or even a government organization, on how that is managed.
Well, believe it or not, we have chewed up our 30 minutes already. I cannot believe it. I'm just looking at the clock. I cannot believe. I thought maybe 15 minutes passed by. You guys are good. Time flies when you're having fun, as they say. Well, please, before we end this broadcast, I think it's important for people to know how they can contact you and any other information you'd like to impart to our audience and to people listening into the video on YouTube and soon on your website, I guess, as we're developing that. And then I guess we'll be together again, another live broadcast in the next couple of weeks or so. So if I'd like to turn it back to you guys.
Well, thank you. We have a dedicated line for the Executive Exchange Radio. I don't know what the extension is, but the number it's a toll-free number, is 888-720-6996. And I'll be happy to hear folks' comments, maybe topics they may be interested in hearing us, tackle and talk about. If you call us and just leave us a message, we promise that we'll bring it up on the next time we're on the air.
Okay, and what about your website, maybe, if they want to visit your website?
Do you know it by heart, George?
No, but I'm looking for it. I'll tell you what it is in a minute.
I've got it here. It's EX2, the number 2, leaders.com.
EX2leaders.com.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been interesting. I think we can go on for hours, by the way, but maybe we'll continue some of this on the next broadcast, and plus we'll introduce some new material. Thank you so much for joining me today as a moderator for Executive Exchange Radio.
Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy, everybody.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, folks, thank you very much for listening in. We hope that you would enjoy this this broadcast. We will be doing this every couple of weeks and taking on different subjects on the areas of management with the Executive Exchange radio group. And if they wish, they can continue to have me as the moderator. You could go to their website or give them a call if you have any questions.